everyone, and welcome to the Serial Geek TV YouTube channel. My name is James Eatock, and today I present to you 50 things about Starscream. So without any further ado, let us begin. Starscream was originally named Ulchtar, credited to both Jim Shooter and Denny O'Neil, who created a great deal of the original Transformers mythos. When Bob Budiansky took over, he renamed the character Starscream, and a legend was born. Originally, his colour scheme looked like this, and it can be seen in the first piece of Transformers animation, the wonderful Toei Doga animated commercial for the first issue of the Marvel comic book. Starscream was, of course, voiced by the late, great Chris Latta, who also voiced Sparkplug and Wheeljack. And yes, he would use the same voice for Cobra Commander, who incidentally appears in the third season of the Transformers, kind of. Like many of the Decepticons, Starscream used to be a good guy and was actually a scientist alongside Skyfire. Midway through the animated movie, Starscream suddenly looks incredibly imposing. There is absolutely no reason for this sudden design change other than the obvious, that a different team of animators or studio worked on the scene. Thanks to the transformations of Skywarp and Thundercracker, we are aware of what Starscream's Cybertronian mode looked like, even though we never see him transform on Cybertron. Thankfully, his robot design just happened to resemble that of an F-15 fighter jet when the Transformers found themselves on Earth. Lucky that. Whilst clones of Skywarp and Thundercracker would show up from time to time, it was incredibly rare that a clone of Starscream would appear, though this shot from More Than Meets the Eye Part 3 is kind of hard to ignore. He once disguised himself as Optimus Prime. Yeah, let's not get into the logistics of that. Prior to Starscream's death in the movie, he is believed to have died in the Purnell Books storybook Deadly Paradise as Windcharger crushes him and, to quote, "The Decepticons screamed for the very last time." Yikes. In the US comic, Starscream was defeated, deactivated and captured by Omega Supreme and the Autobots in issue 19. He would not return for another 22 issues. When Starscream eventually returned to the US comic, he sought out the power of the Underbase, a database that underlies all databases containing all of the combined knowledge of the Transformer race. Sadly for him, the power of the Underbase proved too great and it wound up destroying him, although as his power grew, his form did look rather impressive. And it does help that Jeff Sr. drew this UK cover. Starscream forms a rather one-sided alliance with Dr. Arkeville, which results in the poor Doctor not only being electrocuted, but being transformed into an immobile cyborg. Due to the same character model being used for Starscream, Skywarp and Thundercracker, on numerous occasions Starscream would appear where he wasn't supposed to appear. Thankfully, many of these errors were caught during production, though Rhino kindly restored these errors for the DVD release. Oh joy. In the 1986 Transformers UK annual, Starscream performs a wonderfully cold-blooded move. Sought out by a heat-seeking missile in his jet mode, he hurriedly transforms into his robot mode, with the only heat source being the evil human he has just ejected from his cockpit. The human's name, and I have to be really careful how I pronounce this, Zeke Heilman. Yeah, just in case you weren't sure he was a bad guy. Starscream's death in the movie is a dramatic and memorable scene. His death in the Marvel Comics adaptation? Not so much. Don Figueroa's illustration of Starscream's death from the 2006 comic book adaptation is glorious. Such was the popularity of the character that even after his death he returned in 2 Season 3 episodes set in the year 2005 and even appeared in the much celebrated Beast Wars cartoon. It should be worth pointing out that in the second of Starscream's 2 ghostly appearances he teams up with Unicron. Okay, it's not as impressive as it sounds, as Unicron is merely a floating head in space, but still. Amusingly, when illustrating Starscream for the US Marvel comic, artist Jose Delbo looked at the animation model sheet and assumed that Starscream only had one ear, for want of a better word. Rarely discussed is the fact that the actions of Starscream inadvertently reactivate the Autobots, thus restarting the war between the two sides 4 million years after their last battle. Starscream begging for his life is not one of his finest moments. A rather unique weapon is showcased by Starscream in the initial miniseries, with the second in command wielding an actual slingshot. Starscream's gun doesn't appear to be that well attached to his arm. Either that or Spike Witwicky has the strength of a robot in disguise. Hey, that was uncalled for, Prowl. He makes one of the best unintentional comedy exits from a scene in the series. Starscream reveals with great pride in the episode A Prime Problem that he enrolled in the Cybertron War Academy. Methinks he passed rather comfortably. It is not uncommon during the first season for Starscream to publicly declare himself leader of the Decepticons. This usually occurs within seconds of Megatron being defeated.
How unfortunate. If you cannot fight your opponent yourself, you are not fit to be our leader. I am the only suitable leader anyway.
Starscream's chest missiles, as seen in Fire on the Mountain, are awesome, though seem to be the target of some humour. I can't think why. Interestingly, the Studio Ox model for the character has the areas depicted, rather sensibly, as turbines. Somewhat frustratingly, because we hate to say he's right, Starscream will highlight a specific flaw in Megatron's latest plan for conquest, and more than often, the second in command is proven right. During an adventure in South America, Starscream is attacked by a large snake. Okay, but look at this image. Given the size of the Transformers, how big is that damn snake? In issue 44 of the Marvel UK comic, Optimus Prime punches Starscream so hard that his wings fall off in dramatic fashion. Starscream is rather effortlessly defeated by Megatron in the episode Hoist Goes Hollywood, as we see the Decepticon leader pull some wires out of Starscream's chest, immediately immobilizing him. Banished from the Decepticons, Starscream stumbled upon some World War II vehicles and created the Combaticons, and yes, he even created their ability to unite into the form of Bruticus. Impressive work, Starscream. And in the following episode, Starscream was let back into the Decepticons when he and the Combaticons proved themselves useful to Megatron. These Decepticons are rather fickle, aren't they? In the toy line, Starscream became one of the Pretenders in 1989, quite possibly my least favourite Transformers toys. Yes, even more so than Action Masters, the Transformers that did not transform. In the later Marvel comics, Starscream forms an uneasy alliance with Shockwave. It should be noted that Shockwave in the comics was depicted drastically different than in the cartoon, with him having a strong desire to overthrow Megatron and lead the Decepticons, which he did very early on. Korean animation studio Acom would utilise his model sheet numerous times in the episodes they animated. In fairness, it was a good looking, strong character pose. In one of the memorable UK stories, The Enemy Within, Starscream attempts to kill Ravage, who is planning to report a pending betrayal by the second in command. Although Starscream is a scientist and possesses great knowledge, he fails somewhat in this area when he believes that the mind of a human, that of mad genius Dr. Archiville, could fill a single Energon cube. During his initial appearances in the Marvel comic, Starscream's colour scheme oddly did not resemble his toy. Although they were often at odds, Megatron would, on numerous occasions, team up with Starscream in battle. And the pair made for a deadly duo, as we see in this infamous scene from the animated movie. In a rather striking illustration that appears in the 1986 Transformers UK Annual, Starscream attaches a slain Megatron's fusion cannon to himself. Sadly, the panel has Starscream coloured as Grimlock, so here it is, corrected. There you go. Starscream's Null Ray was a powerful weapon that could instantly stop mass energy equivalents, thus rendering anything mechanical dead in its tracks. This even affects Transformers like poor old Gears. Understandably, the Null Ray is not used too much in the series as it is too powerful a weapon. In one of the most famous and celebrated stories of the Marvel UK comic, Target 2006, the time-travelling Galvatron is shocked to learn that Megatron has teamed up with the Autobots to defeat him, and so, in a rather wonderful piece of irony, Galvatron teams up with Starscream in order to take down Megatron, Starscream not realising that he has joined sides with his eventual murderer. Starscream does not know the difference between his foot and his shin, and no, I'm not going to make a joke about the animation director for this scene being Nelson Shin. Although I'm sure we'd all like to forget about the Generation 2 comic, it did have an interesting story in which Starscream became one with the Matrix. As a result, and much to his displeasure, he began to perform acts of good. I used to own an animation cell of Starscream threatening Brawn. Yes, past tense, I sold it, and yeah, I do kind of regret it. As I mentioned earlier, Starscream died in the comics attempting to gain all of the knowledge of the Underbase. In the UK comics, his corpse was located in South America and he made quite the memorable appearance. In a rather random moment during the episode Divide and Conquer, as Starscream delivers some dialogue, in order to get his point across, his hand glows. Weird. Starscream had the honour of appearing on a first-class stamp illustrated by Andrew Wildman and coloured by John Paul Bove. And finally, it's fair to say that Starscream is one of the most celebrated of the Transformers. Maybe he did get his wish after all and become Tyrant of the Firmament, at least in the minds of we fans. And that's it for this video. Thank you for watching. Please be sure to like, comment, share and subscribe.